Hey everyone, it's Lisa from the blog farmhouseonboone.com, and today I want to show you how to make, or how I make, potato soup. Potato soup is one of our family's favorite fall meals. It's hearty enough to eat on its own with some toppings like avocado or bacon. It feels like a complete meal. You might want to serve it alongside some crusty sourdough bread. Either way, this is one that all of my kids actually really love and get excited when I make. So let's dive right into the recipe. We're gonna start with 10 potatoes. Now I just like to kind of chop them rough. It doesn't have to be super small because they're all gonna cook down. I like to use these red potatoes. I like the flavor better, and I don't feel like the skin is very thick, so you don't have to peel them. Now this recipe here will comfortably serve a family of 6 without really any side dish. Now sometimes I like to double recipes when I'm making something like this. I'll just keep chopping till I have 2 bags of potatoes cut up. That way we can have potato soup for leftovers because it makes a great leftover. We'll usually eat it out of this pot, and then once it cools down, I'll put it into the refrigerator in the pot with the lid. And that way I can just pull it out and warm it back up. And no new dishes are made. It just makes for a super easy meal, especially if you have some extra toppings made, like some shredded cheese or crumbled up bacon. Sour cream is amazing with it. You're good to go for another meal without any cooking. All right, next I dice up 4 onions. Now I know that is kind of an outlandish amount of onion. Breaks up the starchiness of all the potatoes. And whenever it's cooked together with the potatoes, and then whenever I do a little bit of pureeing later, your kids don't even notice that they're there. And so it's a good way to get in a vegetable that you might not get a large quantity in their diets very often, because you know most children don't love onions, without them even noticing or complaining. Mine don't care at all. Now if your kids are a little bit more finicky with onions, you could dice them up really small so that any part of the onion that isn't pureed, they won't notice. All right, next I'm gonna add about 3 cloves of minced garlic. Now, if you're feeling adventurous, you may add a little bit more. I absolutely love using a lot of garlic. I'm gonna add a few more. Next, I'm gonna add 6 cups of bone broth. I just freshly made some bone broth. I have a tutorial on this channel if you want to learn how to make it in your Instant Pot or on your stove. It's super simple either way. All right, next I'm gonna add 5 teaspoons of salt. Now the reason this recipe does call for so much salt is because I am using homemade bone broth, and then fresh veggies like potatoes kind of really soak up a lot of salt. So there's no salt to start with, so you need a lot more than you might expect. Now you can of course cut this down to your taste. This is just how our family prefers to eat it. All right, I'm just gonna go ahead and put the lid on and allow this to simmer until everything is nice and soft. Right, the next step after everything is nice and soft is just to give it a little blend so that some of this soup is creamy and there's a little bit of chunk left in it as well. Now I use an immersion blender, but what I used to do before I had an immersion blender was I took half of it and put it in a blender and pureed that half and then added it back to the pot with the part that I left thicker. So you can do it either way. I'm just gonna give this a little bit of a puree with my immersion blender. All right, now I'm just gonna put in several grindings of fresh cracked black pepper. And then I'm gonna serve this up. Now I like to use kind of less broth so that way I can not have to add any flour. You can either add a little bit more broth and let it sit with the lid off to evaporate off some of the liquid, or use the amount called for in this recipe. Or you could always add some flour to thicken it up as well. All right, now I'm gonna top this with all of my goodies. Now this is what makes this a hearty and whole meal that my kids are in love with. The best topping is some fresh cheddar cheese. I like sharp cheddar. I just grate it freshly into the bowls or make a big bowl ahead of time. If I'm doing a bunch of cheese at once, I'll get out my food processor. Otherwise, I'll just do it in a large bowl and it'll be on the table with dinner. Some sour cream. And diced bacon. I pulled some parsley out of the garden this morning. That tastes delicious on there. A lot of times I'll throw on some diced avocado that I've salted a little bit. That is great. Luke and I like to put crushed red pepper flakes on top of ours to give it a little spice. So we'll do that. The kids don't really like that so much, but this smells so good. It's the perfect fall meal. Add a couple extra onions, your kids won't even notice, and it'll taste delicious to them and be nice and filling. Make extra and have it for days. All right, well, make sure to head over to the blog if you've tried this recipe and give it a rating. Also, you can save this recipe for later on Pinterest or wherever you like to save things. It's all right there on the blog to save, as well as print off the printable recipe card over on farmhouseonboone.com. I'll leave a link to that post in the description below. All right, well, if you're brand new to my channel, please hit that subscribe button. I make 2 new videos every week on food from scratch, natural living in a handmade home. Thank you so much for stopping by the farmhouse.